Welcome to the Thriving Artist Podcast, where we share strategies and support for artists to thrive.
We know that the art world can feel like a lonely place, and we want to provide a network of support, impactful strategies, and an abundance of encouragement to help you grow your authentic art career.
We're your hosts. I'm Jamie Smith.
And I'm Kaylan Butine, and we are also the co-founders of the Thrive Together Network, a community of female and non-binary identifying artists and artists who are caregivers.
We truly believe in community over competition, and we're so glad you're here. Enjoy this episode.
Welcome to this episode of the Thriving Artist Podcast. We are so glad you're here. I'm Kaylan Butine, one of your hosts, and I believe that artists can take up space in their own communities by showing their work on their terms.
I'm Jamie Smith. I'm your second host, and my very first art show I ever did, I hosted myself. It's called Confessions, and I even made a real confessional booth that was at the opening night. It was pretty fun.
That's so cool.
So this episode, we are sharing why hosting your own art show is important. So this topic is so near and dear to Kaylan and I because we created an entire initiative around this. So it's the Taking Up Space initiative, and we asked Thrive Together Network members to host their own shows in their own communities all around the world in the month of May. And we asked them to do this every year during the month of May, which is so exciting. Because we believe that showing your work on your own terms and not waiting for gatekeepers of the art world can feel really empowering. And we know that gatekeepers in the art world, they have their place and time, and we'll dive into that a little bit later. But this is such an exciting experience to do this on your own. So we actually saw this past year over 60 members host their own art shows. And a lot of these were solo, but a lot of these were group shows. So there was probably hundreds of individual artists that actually participated in May, which was so inspiring.
So inspiring. And we asked members to share pictures of their shows. Lots of people were sharing information. They made show cards. And it was just so fun to see all of the momentum, to see the activity, to see these artists coming together and working together. We saw gallery shows. We saw shows in people's garages. There were shows in coffee shops. There was a show in the forest, which is amazing. I remember one was in somebody's sunroom. You can see more of last year's shows by going to the hashtag Taking Up Space 2022 on Instagram. Again, most of these shows were around the month of May. A few were in April, a few were in June, but that was kind of the goal, was having this big moment in our year as artists where we're taking up space together, we're exhibiting our art together. And it was just such an incredible experience to see all these artists coming together and doing this for their own work. It just proved to Jamie and I that taking up space is important, it's needed, and it's something that the artists in our community are empowered to do. We can do this. Like, we can all do this together. It's so important.
It was so amazing to hear member stories because we got to hear what they learned in the process.
Yeah.
And a huge thing was seeing members kind of become leaders in their own community by putting together group shows, by asking to take up space, and then inspiring others to do it. So that was really amazing. I think a big aha, Kaylan, that I found really funny, was members realizing that you can literally go out and make things happen for yourself.
Yeah.
Simply by asking. So we had a few members, and especially one, this lovely artist, Nicole Lau, here in Vancouver. I remember her telling me that she wanted to do the show. So she went to a coffee shop and she's like, "You'll never guess. I asked them and they said yes." And it was amazing. And that kept happening for people. And you really see the power of being part of something. And I think, I wonder, and, I'll ask Nicole, like, would she have done that without being part of this initiative and knowing
Mhm.
that artists all over the world were doing this as well? And probably not, because it is really scary and intimidating. And so there's such power in knowing that you're not alone when you're taking up space as well.
Absolutely. Do you remember, Jamie, that our goal for the first round of the initiative was that we wanted 20 shows to
We
happen?
thought that would be such a win. That would be
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, and I think, I think we're being a little bit conservative when we say the number 60. But there were definitely around 60 shows. As you mentioned, many of those shows were group shows. So we think there were hundreds of artists that were involved in our first round of Taking Up Space, which is
Mhm.
incredible. We wanted to craft an episode here for you today that talks very specifically about why we think this is so important, why we think it's important for you, whether you're a seasoned and more mature artist further along in your career, or you're an emerging artist, why we think it's important for you to host your own art show. And there
Mhm.
are way more than 5 reasons that Jamie and I could come up with for this. But, we like our little lists. So we're giving you the top 5 reasons in this episode for why we believe that hosting your own art show is important. Jamie, why don't you start us off?
Yes. So we think hosting your own art show is important because, firstly, your show can be on your own terms and your own schedule. So you get to be the boss, you get to plan out the location, the timing that works best for you, also the season that you're in your practice and your life and the goals that you want to achieve. So for me, this was huge because I had an application that I really wanted to apply to that was coming up in the summer. So having this show in May was perfect because I got to use my photos from the Taking Up Space show I did called Mother Time. And I used that for applications that were coming up right away. And I now still use those photos, but I really got to plan the rhythm of my year, which cannot be the case when you've applied and you're given a show, which is
Mhm.
amazing.
Mhm.
But now I know every May, when I think of my resume, I think about my goals, I can really plan my year around that. And I'm already doing that for this next year, which feels really exciting instead of kind of always being beholden to opportunities coming my way, which I'm still going to say yes to, but I know I have this staple May time show. So, especially good for me was when I hosted my own show, I got to set the show hours, I got to set the time. And so I could fit in my work with Thrive, Together Network, and I could fit that in with the other life events I had going on. So, it really worked for me. And I'm really excited for May of this year.
Yeah, I love that because I love big planning and planning ahead. But I do think it's important to plan an art show for yourself that meets one of your goals that you do on your own term and on your own schedule. Like you said, that's such a great item for number 1. So I'm going to move us into number 2 for why we think hosting your own art show is important. And this was the biggest one for me last year. My goal with my Tush show was to build out my network. So I recently moved during the pandemic to Fort Wayne, Indiana. And, moving here in 2020, of course, it kind of limited the amount of art friends I
Not the
was.
most social year for
No,
you, Kaylan.
not the most
No.
social, which is okay. But I had a bit of a slow start, we'll say, in getting my footing in my network, in my community, getting to know other artists. And so last year, my 2022 Tush show was specifically built around this idea of building my network and connecting with other artists in my area. And I hosted a group show then with a small group of artists, female artists and artist mothers. And, now those artists have become friends. We're actually planning our next Tuss show. We're doing another group show together in 2023 because we enjoyed working with each other so much. We have gone to each other's shows that were later in the year and just kind of tried to show up for each other. So I think number 2 is such an important one. If you're needing to expand your network, if that's a goal for you as an artist, the Taking Up Space initiative is a great reason to build out your community.
Totally. And it's hard to sometimes this is a love or hate idea, love it or hate it. But it does matter who you know. It does
Mm-hmm.
matter building a network. And not only for opportunities, but again, Kaylan and I really believe in community
Yep.
and feeling that you aren't alone in this. So these are things like I love that your show has led to you feeling supported as an artist in Fort Wayne. So that's so great.
Yep.
And so I'm going to move us to number 3. And why it's important to host your own art show is to learn how to promote your work. And this one, I can feel the feelings in myself rise up. So if you're
Yes.
listening to this, yeah, it can be really hard to be sharing your work online all the time. It feels like you're constantly just talking about this one thing and shouting into the abyss. And I totally get that. Hosting your own art show, I feel always gives me a reason to
Mm-hmm.
shout it off the rooftops because I need people to physically come. I need them to come see that work. And so I know that people need to see that reminder over and over again. I need to motivate them. I need to share what I'm doing. So don't, do as I say, not as I do. But if you go to my Instagram, you'll see like I am super active when I have a show because for me, that gives me purpose. It
Mm-hmm.
feels it's important. And I find it much harder to maintain that in between. So that's why I love having, as I said, I'm thinking already about May because, I just feel that that gives me such a good benchmark for, giving the lead up to what I'm doing, all that type of stuff.
Yep.
So one thing I'm really proud that we did, Kaylan, and we talked a lot about, how do we bring people in to this initiative? And, me in the teacher ways, I was like, how do we support them but not micromanage?
Right.
And how do we and you were so good at being like, they are going to make shows in their own community. And I just
Mm-hmm.
love that.
Mm-hmm.
And we are guides and we are creating structure, but this is about, and I agree, once you learn how to put on your own art show, that is where the power happens because
Right.
you have the toolkit to do that when it suits you, not just in the month of May when we
Right.
want you to.
Right.
This is a lifelong skill, right? So we did make a Taking Up Space course that lives on the network. And I think it's so important for this part of the process because we have a video on making a press release. We show, newsletters. We have a promo sort of write up about what Taking Up Space is so that you can include that and say, I'm part of this bigger thing. And
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you, galleries, coffee shops, anywhere you want to show love that
Yep.
they are part of something as well. How amazing is that? So I think that really helped with getting a lot of yeses for our community. And, this is all part of the network membership is this
Yep.
access to the course. So I'm really proud we did do that, even though it was hard to know how that should look for members, but I
Yep.
think it worked.
Yeah, and I think, one thing that we are trying to do next year too is taking the feedback that we got from the first round of artists who walked through this program with us and who took our resources and actually used them. And of course, this next year we're going to be making them better. So providing a landing page on our website will be creating a Taking Up Space logo that you can use and put on your flyers. There'll be lots of resources there. Again, this is all just part of our membership, part of being a part of TTN. And you don't have to participate in Taking Up Space to be a member, but it's just great to see the momentum, to see artists really valuing their work and putting in the effort to put together shows. I mean, who doesn't want another show, right? Like, and it's if half of the work is done for you, why not do it, right? So I'm going to move us to reason number 4 for why we think it's important for you to host your own art show. You will appreciate other people when they sell your work. This is such a
Oh,
good one.
yeah.
Such a good one. I think, yeah, like this is just one example of how it takes so much effort to be an artist And there's so much in the artist ecosystem. There's all these different players that have these identities, that have these tasks, right? And so when you're showing your own art, when you're putting on your own art show, you kind of get to understand what goes into all of these different pieces that bring it together. And specifically when it comes to selling your work, sometimes it can be disappointing when a gallery, say, sold one of your paintings and you only get half of the amount for what it sold, right? Because the gallery takes their commission. But through taking up space, you get to see how much effort it takes to make that connection, to build that relationship, to sell that work. And it can offer us a little more perspective and a little bit of understanding and appreciation for some of those other players in the art world, like curators, gallerists, or others who sell our work for us. It can help us feel more grateful and more willing to share because we have a better understanding, right? And we feel like we can appreciate them more. So even though, I might sell my work on my own, or there's many ways to be an artist, right? I think just having a better picture of the ecosystem of what it takes to put on a show, to promote it, to sell it, to do all of the pieces is one of the beautiful things about taking up space.
Yeah, take my money. Take that money and thank you for the sale. No, I think it's really important, and it's easy to feel frustrated and, down about that. But then when you're doing it yourself, you kind of, and I think it's why we promote, there's lots of different paths to being an artist. And personally, I know for me, I have to take each of these paths. Like, right. I need a show where someone's selling things. I need to do a show where I am. I need my online store. It's just not as simple for me, the way I do things, that it's not just one person doing all of that right. work, or just me. So it's just great to have all of these skills so that you can be self-sufficient, because you might have a gallery, but then what if that gallery changes hands, or you decide you don't want to be part of it? These are skills that you're going to have. So our final reason, number 5, for hosting your own art show is feeling the sweet, sweet pride of showing up for your important work. The best one.
Yes, that's the feeling that we want for you. We want you to know what it feels like to show up for yourself and to take pride in the work that you are creating and the work that gets shared with the world. That really is what we want for our community. It's that feeling of empowerment, right?
Yes. And there's just nothing like standing at an art show full of people looking at your work and thinking, I did this. I got all of this work here. I got these people here. And yes, it's a lot of work. And we put so much, blood, sweat, and tears into making our art. And so putting on this art show, putting on this place for people to gather and see your work, is to actually take a stand in your own life and say, I am an artist. This is what I do. This is important. And that is exciting.
Yeah. I think it's celebratory too, which is what we're always pushing our artists to do, to celebrate the work that they do more. I think taking up space is an act of radical celebration. And, that's what we want. We want our artists to take up space. So we hope after listening to this that you will be open, willing, maybe excited to host your own art show. Your art is so important, and it's really important for you to get that art out into the world, to take up space with your art. So if you want to join Jamie and I and all of the other incredible artists, the Thrive Together Network community is here for you. We would love for you to sign up and join us. Resources for taking up space are already live on the network, and more will be coming soon. You can sign up and find out more at thrivetogethernetwork.com. So we can't wait to see you there and to see what show you create. We hope you come join us.
We are always here for you. We are cheering you on. We believe in the work you are doing as thriving artists in this world. Thank you for listening.